And you just have to make sure that everything works out on both sides. I'm very, very particular about that. I tell people, look, you have to make sure that this works for you also. The money is beautiful. The money is going to blind you. Take the money out of it. Would you do this every day without that? And if it's yes, do the job. If it's no, then I would be very cautious of it, because usually something's going to come of it.
This episode is brought to you by FultonFishMarket.com, the most trusted name in seafood. FultonFishMarket.com is the e-commerce provider for New York's iconic Fulton Fish Market, the largest seafood market in the Western Hemisphere, trusted by top chefs for over 200 years. Fulton Fish Market provides a range of world-class seafood options. FultonFishMarket.com can help you serve a wide range of customers, whether you serve high-profile individuals or just strive for culinary excellence. They deliver directly to your doorstep in all 48 contiguous states, providing a comprehensive selection of the finest seafood, from wild fish to caviar and shellfish. When it comes to seafood, FultonFishMarket.com is our go-to destination and the name we trust. Let's celebrate those who support us and dive into this episode of the Private Chef podcast with a taste of excellence and freshness. Visit www.fultonfishmarket.com to get 15% off your first order. Use code PrivateChef at checkout. Welcome to the Private Chef podcast, serving the 1%. I'm your host, Hennche, and on our show we speak to the best chefs, how they honed in on their skills to excel in the industry, and what it takes to work as a private chef for some of the most exclusive clients in the world. Welcome back to the Private Chef podcast. I'm your host, Hannes Hennche. Today we're joined by the number one private chef in the Gulf Coast, Chef Erik Nunley. Currently he owns Chef Erik Chef Services, specializing in French, Louisiana, and Southern cuisine. With a background in the hospitality industry and top honors from the New Orleans Culinary and Hospitality Institute, his journey is as diverse as his culinary talents. Beyond the kitchen, he enjoys golf and explores New Orleans food scene. Welcome to the show, Erik.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start where it all begins, in the kitchen. Where did your love or your passion for food come from?
My love and passion started with my mom and my grandmother. They are, the matriarchs of the family. They cooked all the time. Sunday dinner in the Black community is definitely one of those events, of the weekend month. And the way they just cooked, it was with love and with intent. You saw them starting early in the morning or afternoon, get ready for Sunday dinner. And it just was that just love that they put into the food, and just the community that it built. That was my first love for food.
That reminds me a little bit also, the Italian community has a similar thing, where it all really the Sundays and the grandmas. And so what were some of the early recipes that you picked up from there? What is something that you still carry out maybe for your clients or yourself that you picked up from your grandma and your mom?
Down here in the South in Louisiana, a lot of Louisiana cooking is based off of French cuisine. A lot of the very New Orleans, Louisiana classics and things like that is very French cuisine driven. So it was very like a surprise when, the skills and things that I saw my mom and my grandmother do, that when I actually got to culinary school, like we were actually learning the same exact steps and techniques and things like that. And so I almost felt like I had like a tad bit of an upper hand. Just on, being able to cook and learning how to cook. But my grandmother, she has these rolls that she's like very famous for. My mom, she makes this banana pudding that's like out of this world. I mean, like making like the custard and things like that with the double boiling and stuff. So a lot of those techniques, it was like, you grow up, you sing, and it's like, wow, like this is what cooking is. And then, go to culinary school and it's like, wow, like this is really what cooking is. So, my mom, she can make almost anything. and my grandmother, she taught everyone how to cook. So it's basically like the doughs and the baking and things like that. Like that's what I guess I would say my grandmother's really known for. And my mom, she's known for just like putting great family meals together. And so it kind of just rubbed off on me.
Yeah. So where did they learn it? Did they go to any structured learning, or they just learn it by doing?
No, no, everything was passed down. My grandmother used to work for like a nanny for like a wealthy family. And so, it's kind of like cooking was, that one gene that was kind of like, or skill that was passed down just through the family.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure if anyone had any formal training, but, the way that they do cook and the way that, the skills they had, I wouldn't be surprised if like someone in the lineage did have some type of like some formal training.
Yeah. So what was your calling going into the private space? Why did you want to work for private individuals, families, rather than being in the restaurant?
When I was just kind of doing my research, I've been around the food spaces for in different ventures and different varieties for a long time in my life. And just the side of not being in a restaurant, more of like just the private sector really kind of has always caught my eye. And getting the opportunity to actually do it, like I really fell in love with it. Being on this side, I think you just have more of what I would say you have more of a grasp on your life, right? Everyone always talks about that work-life balance. I've been on that work-life balance for years, like really trying to find that great balance of where you're able to actually produce income for your life, but also be able to produce actually healthy life for yourself, where it's not all about, the work grind and, trying to move up the ladder. But being on the private side, it just caught my eye just based on the skill level that you have to have, the time that you have to be able to put into your actual craft on your own, and not having to worry about 300 covers a night,
Well, but sometimes 5, 6, 10 covers can be more worrisome than 300 in a restaurant. Because at the end of the day, you're on your own. It's all on you.
Yes, you are. It's and that's one of the things like when I talk to people about being a private chef or even a personal chef, it's it's a demand. Even sometimes when I talk to chefs, they'll be like, oh, you're lucky you do the private side, but it's like, man, like it gets crazy. It's when you go to the store, you got your mind set on one thing you're cooking, your client calls and it's like, hey, I'm adding 2, 3, or 4 people, or, we change our mind. We want this for the night. You got to readjust right then and there. It's so many times, when I go sometime to the market, I've literally been talking to, the person getting some fish or something or some seafood and get a phone conversation, literally have to change up and they're just looking at me like, is this really what you have to go through? And it's like, sometimes it is, and it's just kind of the nature of the beast of this side of the culinary world.
Yes, definitely. So what would you say are the key benefits or challenges compared to working in a restaurant, going private?
I think the one thing that in the private side that you not only are a chef, right? When you are involved and you're engulfed in someone's life and daily routine, I think that's a very difficult thing to kind of get used to at times because you are a part of their life. You are involved in their life. You are involved in their home. The kitchen is usually like the most high traffic and volume area in the house, besides like the bedroom or bathroom. And it's like everyone ends up there. Or usually everyone's house is kind of built around the kitchen. So it's a very high traffic area. And so you do have a lot of like intimate conversations that go on in the kitchen at time, whether they be good or bad. And so I tell people all the time, when you're in the private side, not only are you cooking, you're a chef, but you are involved in the house, like the conversations, the decisions, things that go on in the household. Like you're just involved in all of that. And you have to be able to maintain your composure. You have to be able to say, okay, like even some boundaries and things like that. But being a part of the family, being in that atmosphere, you have to be very open and available to that, and not just have the mindset of always like, let me go and cook and leave. You have to be able to communicate with the family, your kids, or even dogs or animals, and like their friends and family that come over and things like that. So you have to be very open. You have to be able to be very have a great skill set of communication and understanding, and kind of like a do all attitude at sometimes. Sometimes you will be asked to do just a tad bit more than your usual task, and it's not saying that, you take on multiple jobs and multiple hats, but when you're involved in the family, sometimes that type of things does happen, and you build the relationships with people, and it's one of those things where you just have to kind of know it and understand it going in it, because if you get blindsided by it, I know a lot of people who have stopped doing this because like that side of it is not what they really want, or they don't really understand it. They're just used to, turning and burning and knocking out covers all day, and fire and, is on the back on the pass. But it's like, hey, like, sometimes you're cooking some nice, you're making a beautiful salad, and sometimes you're cooking for 10, 15, and it's like you're back on the line. So just being ready and being available for any and everything, because this is probably, I kind of say it's like playing quarterback sometimes. It's like sometimes you're going with a game plan, and sometimes we're handing the ball off 50 times a game. Sometimes you're passing 400 times, so it depends on what's going on in life.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And then it also depends what kind of clients you're willing to work with. How do you usually go
Right.
about maybe selecting or pre-filtering? Because one of the things that I've learned over the years is any interview goes both ways, and I
Yes.
want to see that if it's good fit for both sides. So how do you
Yes.
usually go about that?
Yes. So I usually take 1 week. So when I first meet a client, we go through our interview process. So I interview them as much as they interview me. And I'm very big on that. I tell all the chefs, you have to make sure your work environment is going to be great for you, because again, you're going to someone's home, right? You have to make sure the home presence is right for you. So I usually take that very first week to even make sure if this is something I even want to do with this family, with this client, with this principal. And then I take the first month as a very much a trial period. Like, let's make sure that this works best for both of us, right? And it's even down to like, the path to the house, the grocery stores, the markets that I go to, does everything logistically kind of work? Because, you know, you can have a principal or a client that lives 30 minutes from you, does that even work logistically for your day every day? Does it fit with you? So I tell everyone, take everything into consideration, because yes, this is a job, but again, it's a little bit more than that. When you're on the private side, like it's a little bit more than just saying like, oh, I have a job every day. This is something that's like, it's an art to it, almost.
Yeah. And then there are those aspects where like, oh, we have a second home and it's like only 2.5 hours out of town. Okay, but how often do you want me to be
Right.
there versus here? And like, you know,
Right.
like that commute can easily add up to 10 hours
Right.
a week.
You get in some situations where it's like the money looks beautiful, but it's always, does the pain and suffering that you build into it, does all of that add up? It's, if I'm cooking at their resident this 2 or 3 days, but then, I'm cooking at the other residence or their parents' residence, or, something like that, or, if someone has multiple houses in the city or state or country, so it's like being available, and people don't take everything in consideration, like, I have a client where I go to Nova Scotia with him, once a year, and it's their grocery store. The nearest grocery store is an hour and a half drive away. So it's like if you don't stock up, if you don't get everything you need, now you're SOL, and
Yeah.
it's like those type of things that you have to be ready, you have to be prepared for.
Yeah, I mean that's quite something. That's like sometimes you go to the Caribbean islands and it's really interesting. At the end of the day, you have to realize you are on an island and not everything is
Yes.
available every day at the shop.
No.
Like there's days when
No.
certain things get delivered and where you have abundance, and then there's days where there's nothing.
Yeah, you have to be prepared for that. Even when we do a lot of vacation services, and my most stressful time is making sure that I have everything that I need. Because even when you go on vacation with someone, like you have to pre-plan research what's just the different stores or markets, who has the best this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pre-planning that goes along with it. And I have people that, oh, you're so lucky you get to go to these great places. Like most times I don't even see these places. Like whatever my view is, or whatever the view is on the way to the market and back, yeah, you try to take a little time to be able to explore a little bit. But most times, you don't get a lot of chance to explore. You're really there, to work and do your job. And so you have to pre-plan, and grocery lists have to be down to like a T almost, and
Yeah.
it's crossing T's and dotting I's and make sure you have everything that you need, because it would suck that you're cooking, some duck or a special fish and you forget everything.
I think what you just mentioned is super crucial, especially for somebody who flies in for different travel purposes or something. Is to have the intel. So, like, first of all, what's locally available, and then you really
Yes.
want to check what kind of quality you can get at which markets, and that can vastly range by depending on where you go. So you really have to do your homework and then map it out. What does that mean for me on the map? Like you said, if
Oh,
one shop or the only shop is like over an hour away, that's like really something to take into consideration as to how do you plan out your day and how do you communicate
yes.
with the client as to when the menu needs to be set. Like so you can't
Yes.
change the protein on me 1 hour before dinner if
Yeah.
we decided on something and I did my shopping at like 7 a.m. in the morning.
Right. Yeah. Literally, like when I do vacation services, I literally like map it out. I literally sit down, piece of paper, and mapping things out, like mapping out the way that I want to go. Like I'm calling ahead. Even I'm even checking like the website, social media. It's like, let me see all the visual pictures I can of your products, just to even make sure I want to deal with you. I'm calling pre-ahead, even if it's places where they kind of seem out the way. Let me see if I can just map it, or let me just go through there. Let me put eyes on something, so I can make a best decision from there. And then I'll usually sit down and make a menu, with my client or principal. And it's like, okay, like, look, we don't have much wiggle room, or if I find something I know you'd like, I'll grab it. So, we can maybe have something extra, stuff like that. But it's really about that communication piece, and when I say, like, you have to tap into all your chef skills, really sitting down and going through your procurement and making sure you have everything, and talking to vendors, like, even though, yes, I don't deal with vendors where I'm ordering 30 pounds of lettuce, or, let me get a whole rack of a cow or something like that, but I'm talking to purveyors, I'm talking to grocery produce stores, I'm talking to the deli managers and everyone. Like, I'm talking to the GM sometimes. It's like, what is your best products, or where can you send me? And it comes back to building those relationships when you go, because you just have to be able to have great communication and building those relationships everywhere you go, because you just never know when you're going to come back somewhere. You may need that hookup again.
Yeah. There's another thing that I started kind of integrating in my travels is usually mapping out where I'm going, and then if I know I have a tough time getting their favorite items, I usually try to get them with me on the travel. I,
Hmm.
I make a whole package full of whether it's caviar or something, or something that I know I might have a tough
Yeah.
time getting where we're flying. I'm like, I'll try to get as much of it in my suitcase, properly stored and cooled. But
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you gotta store some stuff, bring it, ship it ahead. But it's just all about that pre-planning, and being organized and being able to just communicate certain things. I think sometimes the lost art of just like talking to someone is kind of, you know, it's fallen away at times, because simple conversation sometimes can defuse a situation very quickly.
yeah, I think actually a larger part of what makes or breaks our job has to do with communication. whether it's with the
It does.
principals, with the other stuff in the house, with the vendors, And I think this is why it's not for everybody to shift from the restaurant world to private, because there's all those
Yeah.
soft skills that chefs are not famous for. Like, in the kitchen, you
Right.
can kind of behave like a wild boar in a way, but you
Yeah.
can't do that in a private household.
No, you can't. No, you have to be very refined. You kind of have to tap into your other soft skills, your other skills that you have to be in the private sector. It's a lot, like I said, there's a lot less force going on. It's more finesse. It's more of your meek side. You know, uh, Even when you're dealing with the clients, it's just very open, honest communications. They're usually, high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals. So they're used to dealing with different array of people and communicating and stuff like that. And a lot of times, like sometimes you have tough conversations, but it's being able to just communicate, communicate openly, communicate freely. Again, a lot of conversations or a lot of issues could have been avoided if a very like short conversation could have happened a long time ago, before it got worse. And no, it's just being able to communicate. Again, like you're in the most high traffic area of their house. People are always going to come in. They're going to dump things on you. Emotionally and physically and stuff like that. And so you have to just be able to know your way, know your boundaries. And it is the hardest part. It is the part where a lot of chefs, they either make it or they don't make it in this side because of that. We're used to just turning and burning, and once you get into the side, you kind of almost have to tap into your very like soft demeanor side of yourself to be a champion in this world.
Yeah. Do you feel like you had any really awkward situations that you didn't anticipate or saw coming, something that felt really unusual based on maybe coming from the restaurant or hospitality background?
Yeah, I've had times where I've been on my audition phase, my time period where we're kind of like getting to know each other, and I've known off bat it's like this isn't for me. Like this situation isn't for me. This family isn't for me. And being in a city where there's a lot of sports teams. We do have a lot of athletes and entertainers and things. And I've literally been in a house where I was on audition, and the second day, I think I was there for lunch. I did lunch and dinner the day before, and I was coming back for lunch. And when I did lunch that second day, I knew this situation wasn't for me. And having to have that conversation with the client and having a conversation with their agent, it was a difficult conversation, but it was one of those ones where it's like, I got to stand firm on my decision. Like this just isn't for me. I don't care how great the money looks. Like this situation just doesn't feel right for me, and then down the line, I've heard through the grapevine, they've gone through several chefs after, and it's like, okay, like what I felt, I wasn't crazy. The intuition it does talk to you at times. And a lot of times, when we're searching for jobs and when we're searching for, income and things like that, we will take on situations that may not be the best for us. But I think a lot of times it's just, you have to stand 10 toes on your decisions that you make. Sometimes if your intuition is telling you something, then it's like, hey, like we really need to look or see what's going on with that, and I think that's very important when I talk to chefs, when I'm placing them in a home with someone or with a principal or even for myself. It's like, if you do not feel comfortable or things like that, then you need to explore what that is, because your intuition is trying to tell you something, and it may be something that comes up 10 days, couple of months, a year from now, but it's making sure that you're in the best type situation for yourself.
Sorry for the interruption, but we gotta share the news with you. Nothing fishy from FultonFishMarket.com. They're delivering world-class seafood from New York City's legendary Fulton Fish Market straight to your door. Their fishmongers have helped countless chefs get what they need when they need it for over 200 years. Trusting FultonFishMarket.com means their experts work tirelessly to make your day run smoothly. Let your cooking skills shine and elevate your dishes with amazing seafood from FultonFishMarket.com. Yeah, I think this is a very powerful point you're making, and it's something that I originally kind of dismissed. And some of it you
Yeah,
already mentioned. Initially we're just trying to get a job, or the money looks good, and this is something that we all have to explore for ourselves to really tune into that. And the funny
yeah,
thing is, once you kind of go through a full cycle experience on this, you it, you kind of knew, like, in hindsight, you're like, I knew something was off. But the interesting thing is,
yeah,
intuition is so subtle compared to logic, and we kind of try to
yeah.
justify situations logically, and then we just kind of walk into it. But underlyingly, we already had that sense of something isn't right.
Yeah, and you can always tell. Again, I mean, you're in the home, you're in the kitchen. Like, like I said, the home and kitchen has such an aura and such a vibe that you can always tell when it's like happiness going on, or when it's, some craziness that's going on, in the area. And you just kind of have to be okay with that. The money sometimes looks great. When we're being offered $200,000 and to fly this part of the country, this part of the year, and be in this country another part of the year. I mean, it looks absolutely amazing, and I'm sure the experience will be great. But if it's not great for you as the person who actually has to be there and do the cooking and actually go through the ups and downs and the great times and the bad days, and when it's raining and it's cold, or when it's hot, like, you're the person that has to go through that. And you just always have to make sure that situation works for you as also well as a client and principal.
Yeah, I
So it's
saw
definitely a two-way street.
100%. I saw a recent job post, and it was like 7 days on, 5 days off. A second chef in the
Hmm.
picture, and at the same time, they said basically cooking goes from 7:30 a.m. till 9 p.m. and lots of entertaining snacks, and you kind of have an idea what you're getting into there. Like, the money might look great,
Yeah,
but this is a very high
you're gonna be
demand
busy.
household. Like, you're gonna be busy. If they
Yes,
already
it
put it
is.
out there like this, you're like, you will be
Yeah.
busy, man.
Those job descriptions, I love when those job posts or job description, they get very descriptive, because it's like, okay, describe to me kind of what I'm going in, so I kind of get a picture. Like, you can always tell, like, people like, oh, we live this part of the year, people who travel a lot. You can always tell, okay, look, you have to be very organized. You're gonna have to be, if let's they have systems already set up, you're gonna be going there and try to create systems just to make sure you have a peace of mind on a daily basis. Or even sometimes, it's like, yeah, we may have a family of 3 or 4, but then they also have a household staff. It's like, you got to take care of the household staff also, so it's like, you're going to be doing a lot of cooking, and you got to make sure that everything aligns up for you, because or not, you're going to be having a very hard time.
Yeah, that's very right. And the other day, I had a conversation with another chef where we were exploring how I find different professions from the principal create a different
Hmm.
environment. Like,
Hmm.
there's, for example, I'm not very fond of working for entertainment artists, because
Yeah,
their
me either.
lifestyle is, they're very, how do you say that? They're very exuberant. They probably appreciate nightlife. There's like all these
Yes,
things happening on the fly. There besides, maybe when they
yes,
have a professional tour, their schedule could be all over the place in so many ways. So I've spoken to a couple of different private chefs who are like, it's crazy to work for entertainers like that, because they will
yes,
walk in on you any time of the day. They'll call you in the middle of the night because they're having a party with their friends or something. And in
yes.
that regard, I found it actually pretty, or a lot more plannable to work for, people that work in C-level, or who own companies, or money managers, because they have, by default, they have a very structured year, almost. Like, they kind of know where they want to be this month. They know when it's normal for their
Yeah,
environment to go on vacation. They know when they want to be in the Hamptons. They know when they want to be in the Caribbean. and it's all pretty mapped out.
Yeah.
And then I guess athletes also, they have a season, so it kind of revolves around the season.
Yeah.
But I could still see that some of their schedules could get a little bit more demanding. So this has been an interesting conversation we had last week around choosing the principal, also a little bit by how do they look at their year, because it kind of allows you to see how this work-life balance plays out for yourself.
That is extremely important. One of the first questions people ask me, when I explain them what I do is, have you cooked for anyone famous and things like that? And I always have to tell them, usually the more famous they are, usually it's kind of the difficult situation to be in. Entertainers, athletes, I've always found them difficult as a client, and not always difficult as like the person is difficult, but usually the surroundings and things you have to deal with are usually difficult. With entertainers, it's their lifestyle. Again, you are in the kitchen, you're in their house, so you're engulfed, you're incorporated into their lifestyle. And so usually I find if you're younger, sometimes being with an entertainer athlete works out best because their schedule is very sporadic. It could be a phone call in the middle of the night saying, hey, I want some fried chicken or something right now, something wild. And it's like, man, it's 2:00 in the morning. Like, that may be a little tough, or something like that. But they're usually their lifestyle and their entourage and family members and things like that. Like, usually it's not them that's difficult. Usually it's someone that's a part of the group that may be difficult. You always have to have your boundaries. I mean, because it's a flashy lifestyle. It's a beautiful lifestyle that, people usually adore that type of lifestyle that athletes and entertainers live, and actually to be engulfed in that is something totally different. And it's just something that if that's the route you go down, you have to be very, very prepared for and just have your mindset going in like this may be some very off the wall type of evenings, and you just have to be ready for that. I do prefer clients and principals that are usually business owners or work for some type of business or things like that, because their lifestyle fits my lifestyle. It's not all over the place. It's not usually very sporadic things that come up. I remember I was cooking for an entertainer client. I was cooking for his wife and his family, because usually he was on tour and things like that. So I kind of helped take care of them. And, he came out with this like freestyle that went very like viral and things like that. And some things he said in there, people were calling me and DMing me, was like, man, was that you? Like, is he talking about you? And he was like, no, I have nothing to do with this situation whatsoever, but it's like things like that you don't even think of, it's again, that the entertainment, the athlete lifestyle is very, very different. I was cooking for one of the Pelican players one time, and he wanted the after the game meal. And so it's like, well, I'm showing up at his house at like 10:00 at night to make his meal for him and his family that are coming back from the game, so now they're getting served at 11, 12:00 at night. And then I'm going home, at 1 with a 30-45 minute drive to be right back there again for 5:00 in the morning to do breakfast for him and his kids and everyone when they're getting up in the morning. So it's like those type of things you have to be very, very aware of and prepared for, you may be in rooms with these amazing, people that you look up to or admire and stuff like that. But again, is it always worth your peace of mind? Is it worth the 1, 2 a.m. phone calls or the entourage or, some of the family members who's very needy or nagging you, and they're not even the person that's actually paying you, can you deal with that type of thing?
That's the toughest part. No? If sometimes the person that troubles you the most is far remote from the person that's paying you, and you're like, why do I have to deal with you?
Yes. Right. Exactly. And it's the good and bad. It's the good and take of this job. It's usually, I always tell everyone, it's usually the person in the entourage. There's usually someone that's involved in the group that's going to be a biggest headache. That's not the actual person paying you, or you're not there to actually take care of.
And I think that one of the things that we want to look out for is if we have somebody who is comfortable having us there late night to serve them and also back there for breakfast, I
Hmm.
usually hope that they at least take notice of that and realize, okay, there is another human being here that is on my
Right,
payroll that I'm asking to basically sleep less than myself in order to serve
right.
me, back and front, and that I have to somehow make up for that. Like, because one of the things that I learned there is the worst is if you have somebody who genuinely doesn't give a damn,
Yeah,
because then
yeah.
you will never find common ground there.
Right. That's another thing that I very much take into consideration when dealing with a client and when I talk to other chefs. It's, I make it very clear up front that we work together. Like, this is not, if at any point I ever feel like the help, or if I feel like, you're treating me less than, then we're ending this contract right then and there. It's very much a respect level type of thing. Yes, you may pay me. Yes, whatever you pay me may be minuscule to what, the money that you bring in and things like that, but that's fine. But it's very much a respect factor that goes into this. We have to have a very mutual understanding. And if any time that I feel uncomfortable, then we end it, and it's just right then and there, because it's, again, that work happiness and balance, it just kind of has to be there for you as a person, and when you have those days when it's crazy or things like that, having a client or principal who is understanding of that and actually kind of makes it up on the back end, it makes doing those, it makes it easier to do, because at least that you're appreciating, your time is appreciating you and what you're doing, your craft is appreciating what you bring to the table, and what you bring to their family and to their household is actually appreciated.
Yeah. And I think this component is, at least for me, oftentimes more important than the pay. Even so, I
Hmm.
obviously always negotiate a pay that I'm comfortable with. But the minute I feel like seriously unappreciated or something, or that
Yeah,
respect goes out the window, then
yeah,
basically the work relationship, yeah, has a short duration from there on.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you always know, and I've been lucky enough to have situations where everything has been very mutual, or if times where I felt like something wasn't going right, I usually am able to sniff it out during that getting to know each other period of us trying to figure things out within that 1 week to a month. And so it's power in that word no. And you just kind of have to be okay with it, because usually whatever you're leaving behind, something greater is always coming anyway, so it's just a lesson that you learn to be able to say, hey, I can sniff this out and know what it is, and then I can just move on to something else.
So for somebody who's new in the industry, who may be
Mm-hmm.
looking at their first job, how would
Mm-hmm.
you help them navigate this situation? Because now you and me are looking back at having done this for years, having
Yeah.
spoken to different people, been through different interview process. We kind of have an idea of what this feels like, should be like for ourselves. But for somebody who's going
Mm-hmm.
through the first round of this, how would you help them navigate it?
It's very much communicating, right? Just having conversations. It's when you go into these processes, as much as they are interviewing you, you're interviewing them. Just have general conversations. Just have talk to them about, how do they view the role? Just how they view the role. What do they want the role to be? How is the kitchen volume? Do y'all hang out in the kitchen? Like, it's little questions like that where you learn about their actual day to day process. It will teach you a lot about how they're actually going to treat you and what you bring to the table. You can also ask if they have any other staffing in the house, like talk to them, get to know them, because you also more than likely you also be cooking family meals for them, or putting food to the side for them, and if they look happy, if they seem happy, things like that, that'll tell you a lot about how people are going to treat you. And I believe in looking at all the signs. It's like going into a relationship. Like, you got to make sure that the relationship is going to benefit you as much as you're going to give to a relationship. And if you feel that, as though that if you get any inkling, I would investigate it. Why am I feeling like this? What is this sense of discomfort? What is that giving me? Why am I feeling it? And see if that's something that you can actually deal with or not. It's if any little thing, if someone's calling you at 2 a.m. constantly, you have to say, okay, am I okay with this, or am I not okay with that? And is that something that you put into your contract that you're okay with? And I really believe creating those boundaries, man, because those boundaries can get very blurred sometime in this game. I tell people to have your boundaries, have your way of saying, okay, I'm okay with this, I'm not okay with this, and stick to it. Because I say, when you're dealing with people who live certain lifestyles, who have a lot of money and things like that, you can either be in some wild situations, or you can be in a very calm and comfortable home. So it kind of depends on the avenue that you want to go to, and you just have to be very mindful. I would say that be very mindful of everything is probably the key word.
Yeah. But again, I think that takes experience. So people have to get their feet wet. They have to get in there, and they have to start speaking to families. And I think one of the important things is to know that not every job is for us as an individual. Like, there will be interviews where we walk into, and no matter how bad we want the money or the job, the situation might not be for us. And I think one of the upsetting parts in the initial stage of going through these trials is that you will never really know the truth. They will tell you all kinds of things as to why you're not fit, but they will never tell you the truth.
No, I mean, sometimes you'll kind of know the truth. I interviewed with a client. It was for he and his wife, and he was going to be traveling different times during the month. So like several times a week he may be out of town, and so it would be cooking for his wife, cooking for him when he's around, cooking for her friends if they come over, stuff like that. And when I did the audition, like, they loved the food. I mean, she was even turning the plate up and licking it, and I was like, oh yeah, I know I got this, right? And I remember, we went back and forth on a round of like negotiations on terms and things like that. And I remember we got very, very close to nailing the deal down, and I never heard from him again. And I was like, man, I always thought that was like so weird. I was like, man, everything was going great. But, it was kind of like a little vibe that you felt. And it's like, okay, he may not have been comfortable with me around his wife that much, and it's very little situations that you never know that may come up. Yeah. And that's why I say take the week and take a month worth of being around the client before you say, okay, this is full-fledged, I'm in. Most, when you go to most jobs, they have like the 90 day evaluation period. I say take that very same time for yourself to make sure that situation is right for you. I take a week to make sure there's something I want to do for a month to even try. And once I do pass that 30 days, when I get close to that 30 days, I have a real hard evaluation to say, okay, is this working? Do I like even being around a client that much? Because you're there past 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, depending on how many meals you're making for them. So again, you are engulfed in their family, and you just have to make sure that situation is right for you.
Yeah, I think 30 days, like 4 weeks, 1 month, is a really good point to evaluate that. Like, I think a week, it gives you an idea, but it kind of leaves things unturned, and anybody can kind of cater to you for a week. After a month, if it's like a regular business as usual month, you get a pretty decent idea.
After a week or so, like I said, it's like dating, right? It's like, someone's always going to show you, what they want you to see for a little while, but then you have to see, who this person truly is, and it's like once you get through a couple of weeks, you can actually really see, okay, like, oh, let me really see how everything is going around, and let me see how really things are really put in motion, because you can only put up a facade for so long, so you have to make sure that once the curtains are pulled back, you have to make sure that you like everything that's going on.
Yeah, I like the
So I
way
really
the
like
comparison
doing
to
a
dating.
month.
It's
Yeah,
really like that.
yeah, it's relationships,
And in a crazy way, you might actually spend more time with them than with your spouse.
You do, man. You do. I days get very long. When you're you're traveling with the family. You're going on vacations, or you're cooking for them every day. Like you're catering to them, so you spend a lot of time thinking about what you're going to do, or dinner parties, or things like that. And so you spend a lot of time with these people, and you just have to make sure that everything works out on both sides, that you're getting what you need from it and they're getting what they need from it. So you just got to make sure everything is, I'm very, very particular about that. Even when I play chefs and with homes and people, I tell people, look, you have to make sure that this works for you also. The money is beautiful. The money is going to blind you. Take the money out of it. Would you do this every day without that? And if it's yes, do the job. If it's no, then I would be very cautious of it, because usually something's going to come of it. I've had some chefs friend where I've literally turned down a job, and they've been up for the job also, and I've told them about these are things that I'm kind of weary of, or these are things that I felt and seen, and they've gone on to do the job, and it turned out horrible. And the things that I felt and saw were the exact things that were humongous issues in that relationship. And it's like, you just have to be very, very aware, especially dealing with athletes. I'm always very aware of who I'm dealing with athletes, right? Because if you're dealing with a mom, or you're dealing with an agent or something like that, it's like, okay, who's in charge? Because you'll have multiple voices coming at you sometimes. You'll have the mom and the uncle or the dad and the agent, and everyone telling you to do the trainer. And it's like, okay, who's in charge? Like, who's the person that we're actually dealing with? Who are we here for? And again, it's sometimes when you're dealing with athletes, entertainers, the entourage is going to be your biggest issues. It's never going to be the actual main person. It's going to be everyone else, and it's just these environments that you just have to be careful and prepared for, until you're able to make your own lane and say, like, I only deal with these certain clients. And, I would say picture your perfect client and kind of build off of that, and say what you will accept and what you won't accept.
I think that's a perfect exercise. Take a pen and paper and visualize what an ideal work relationship looks like. What kind of client gives you that environment? And the closer you get to that, the better. But it's good to kind of have an idea beforehand, like the basic. For example, what do I love to cook that somebody else loves to eat? Like if that's a good fit, everything else can fall in place so much better. But if you kind of have to really, really struggle every day to hit it on the dot what they actually want to eat, then how sustainable is that going to be?
Right. Yeah, man. It is a wild lane that we are in. It's very beneficial. It could be very lucrative, but it also can be very strenuous on the body, mentally, physically, spiritually, and I'm always very cautious of making sure that all of those are aligned, because, I've seen this game take some people out. And it's when you really start chasing the dollar, when you really start chasing after the money that someone is paying you, then you will end up in a lot of bad situations, and make sure the contract is tight. Make sure it's tight.
I think that's true for life. If you just focus on the money, you will end up in bad situations in many different ways.
Oh yeah, always. It's always going back to that. you attract, don't chase it, because I've caught myself up in a lot of bad situations out there really trying to chase money. You'll be in some situations where it's like, I never should have taken this job, never should have, should have done this. The headache doesn't even outweigh the money that you're getting paid sometimes, so you have to be just very aware of what's going on.
Yeah. Well, Erik, we're up on time here. Thank you so much for making the time. And this was so insightful on this specific pillar of what it takes to become a private chef, this entire stage of engaging with new clients. So thank you so much for sharing everything you've learned over the years. Where can people connect with you? I appreciate you. Find you?
Yeah. So my website is Chef St. Erik, ChefStErik.com. And follow my YouTube page. I vlog my culinary and travel adventures. We talk about faith, food, cooking, traveling. And my YouTube page is Chef St. Erik. To come over there and join the journey, man. It's been a blast. Travel everywhere. We get to show a lot of everything that goes on, a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and I tell people about the journey of becoming a private and personal chef in the businesses that I'm running.
Yeah, I think that's so cool to get the look behind the scenes. Sharing the journey as we're progressing. I think that's so much more powerful than at the end, like, here, look at who I am. It's more like, this is the journey, this is the grind, this is the bottlenecks, this is where we were challenged.
It's a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, the good and the bad, the ups and downs of these businesses, and I try to kind of show the true, authentic, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and stuff like that. So it's it's a journey, and so we just try to show it all.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. We'd like to thank our sponsor, FultonFishMarket.com, the best seafood in the nation, trusted by the best chefs in the world. Aside from offering premium seafood, they also make life easier for you by delivering all these outstanding products right to your doorstep. Visit the official website www.fultonfishmarket.com and explore the incredible selection of seafood and let your clients experience quality that has captivated palates for generations. Use code PRIVATECHEF at checkout to get 15% of your first order. When it comes to seafood, FultonFishMarket.com is the name we trust. Thank you for joining us at the Private Chef podcast. If you know any highly skilled chefs that want to take their life to the next level, make sure to share this podcast with them. And if you enjoyed this episode, click subscribe and check out our upcoming episodes. Thank you for listening.